Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KON Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. We have Arina Grossu with us. She's with the Family Research Council. She's the director there for the Center for Human Dignity, and she focuses on the sanctity of human life issues ranging from conception to natural death. Her areas of expertise include abortion, women's health, bioethics, pornography, sex trafficking, assisted suicide, and euthanasia. She's a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. She has a BA in philosophy, a minor in art history. Ms. Grossu, thank you for being on the Joe Miller Show. Appreciate you coming on to talk to us about the Planned Parenthood controversy.
Thanks for having me.
So, Arina, if I may, let's talk a little bit about the efforts on Capitol Hill to defund. I mean, you're right there in D.C. You have an ear to the ground as to what the Republican Party is doing. We put up a story this weekend, I think, where McConnell had actually refused to take a vote on defunding. Then some of these videos, I guess the impact of the videos on the conservative movement raised its head, and now he's reversed himself, now is permitting a vote. Can you tell us where we're at procedurally, where kind of the leadership is at on defunding Planned Parenthood, and whether or not you think this really has, what they're doing has any teeth?
There is a lot of momentum in Washington right now on defunding Planned Parenthood. Right now we have Senators Joni Ernst, Rand Paul, and Langford, along with 21 co-sponsors, and they introduced the legislation to defund Planned Parenthood. They are going to actually vote on it on Monday, and the same bill has been introduced in the House as well, even though a vote hasn't been set on it. Earlier this week, we participated across the nation in a Planned Parenthood rally to defund Planned Parenthood, and we had one here in D.C. A number of different representatives and senators came by and spoke. This happened in 65 cities across the U.S., 13,000 and more participants participating in this. So there's local pressure and there's national pressure to defund Planned Parenthood and to investigate. In fact, 10 different states have now announced that they are going to investigate Planned Parenthood facilities in their state.
10 states. Well, that's fantastic. So obviously criminal charges could follow from those investigations potentially. Any of those 10 states surprise you?
Not really. But, for example, even though Massachusetts, the Attorney General there, is very pro-abortion, even there they said that they would review. We don't expect anything to come of that. But what's good about all this is that there's a lot of pressure to take a look at the practices of Planned Parenthood, to see what they're doing. Are they trafficking baby organs? Are they doing the illegal partial birth abortion? And now at the local level, these investigations are going to take place, and we here in Washington want Planned Parenthood defunded. They receive over $500 million in taxpayer money every single year, and this money can be better used for community health centers that actually do provide different services to women. Planned Parenthood has dropped its preventative services, its screenings. In the last few years, they have dropped by almost half. The only thing that's going up at Planned Parenthood is their abortion numbers.
Well, of course, they claim that only 3% of their services are directly related to abortion. That's a fraudulent number, isn't it?
It's a fraudulent number, and in fact, when it pertains to their prenatal services, abortion made up 94% of all their prenatal services, and out of all their prenatal services, only 0.5% of them were adoption referrals. So we can see what their interests are. For women who come in there pregnant, 94% of them, they're given an abortion. So for pregnant women, and only 0.5% are referred to for an adoption. And then adoption referrals have decreased, et cetera, et cetera. So their interest is really to provide abortions. They are the nation's largest abortion provider.
Right. They're in the baby-killing business, not the preventative health business. One of the things that you mentioned earlier, you had a rally in D.C. You said some of the senators came and spoke there. Who were the notable ones?
Well, we had Senator Langford. We actually had more representatives. Well, we had Ted Cruz come as well. And then on the House side, we had Chris Smith, Marsha Blackburn, Andy Harris, Tim Huelskamp come. And we had a number of different leaders of pro-life organizations. So we had Students for Life, Silent No More, Alliance Defending Freedom, Concerned Women for America, of course, Family Research Council, I went and spoke as well, Americans United for Life as well.
Chris Smith has just been a longtime warrior for life. Tim Huelskamp, again, I guess this is his fourth term, maybe third term. Again, just a real stalwart for conservative causes, especially life. Appreciate both of their uncompromising stands. The 24 sponsors that I think you said there are 3 primary and then 21 others. Are any of the sponsors of this of the defund legislation in the Senate Democrat, or are they all Republican?
They're all Republican. What we need to call them out is that the Americans are shocked and appalled by this, no matter where their stance is on whether they're pro-life or pro-abortion. People are shocked by and disgusted by these videos. And so we need leadership, Democratic leadership, to step up and call it for what it is, that this cannot go on in the U.S. It cannot go on, and that if there are illegal practices going on at Planned Parenthood, they need to be investigated and brought to the fullest extent of the law.
Right, yeah, and that's why I was asking. I mean, this is one of these things that is pretty nonpartisan. I mean, you see these videos of, putting baby parts on a platter and basically not necessarily auctioning them, but trying to drive in the highest amount of revenue for them. I've said this several times on the show. If you're a person of conscience, you can't help but be just absolutely horrified in seeing that. And I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. It shouldn't matter. I mean, this is just human decency. Of course, the beauty of these videos is finally we're seeing what goes on behind the closed doors of Planned Parenthood. This is a real opportunity, don't you think, to actually substantively do something about Planned Parenthood, cut if not eliminate their funding?
Well, of course, because up to this point, people were listening to Planned Parenthood's rhetoric, but now we're seeing the underbelly of Planned Parenthood. And when different top doctors talk about these actual parts, these organs of children, when they're talking about the stomach, the kidney, the heart, the liver, and yet they're exploiting these women and telling them that they have blobs of tissue. Well, blobs of tissue don't have organs. So they're being shown for what they are. And for example, in the latest video today, a medical assistant actually says very gleefully, "and another boy." So this little 11-week-old preborn child, she could tell was a boy. And so we can now see.
Yep, you see it, and it's there for everybody to see. There's no excuse not to push this, to defund them. Thank you, Arina Grossu. Again, Director of the Center for Human Dignity, graduate of University of Notre Dame, doing great work for the cause of life. Stay with us. Joe Miller Show back after this. Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KON Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. This show is made possible by the McPherson Group Tax Defense Attorneys, beatirs.com, or 1-800-BEAT-IRS, that's BEAT, IRS, defending freedom since 1978 and rescuing Americans from IRS tyranny. We are honored to have still with us Arina Grossu. She is the director for the Center for Human Dignity at the Family Research Council. She focuses on issues relating to the sanctity of human life, ranging from conception to natural death. She also has expertise in the areas of abortion, women's health, bioethics, pornography, sex trafficking, assisted suicide, and euthanasia. She also is a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. She received a master's degree in theology. She is also currently working and getting her healthcare ethics certification through the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Ms. Grossu, thank you for staying with us and being willing to talk about the fetal pain issues pending legislation that are before the United States, as well as several of the states therein.
Yes, thank you for having me back again. Fetal pain is major legislation that we're seeing moving in various states right now. It's passed in 12 states, and also there's counseling and waiting periods for abortion laws that are passing as well, and they pass in 12 states as well. And they're supposed to tell women that by a certain age, which is 20 weeks, that their babies can feel pain. And this is grounded in science. And what's very schizophrenic about the people who are part of the pro-abortion lobby is that this is not based on belief. This is based on actual hard science. This is in science textbooks that doctors, especially anesthesiologists who are doing different surgeries, they are told to give anesthesia to mother and child when they're doing an in utero surgery on a 20-week-old preborn child. And so if doctors are instructed, and it's a common practice that they do this, why would they do it if the babies can't feel pain? Obviously, they do feel pain.
How long has that practice? How long has that been a medical standard?
Oh, probably dating back to 70s. And so this is part of their practice. And so the question isn't whether or not these children can feel pain, but whether or not Americans care that they feel pain. Of course, if we're talking about the Cecil the lion or some other animal, you see everyone up in arms about animals. What about these preborn children who are very developed? In fact, everything is there, both in terms of being able to process pain and feel it and perceive it. It's all in there. And actually there are tests, and these are studies, scientific studies that you'll find in the analysis that I wrote, where they actually, if they prod a child with a needle or something in utero, the child will move away from the needle. The stress hormone levels go up in the same way that they would for an adult who was prodded with a needle.
And of course, we see these facial expressions now in the 4D imagery that's coming out.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just extraordinary.
We have pictures of them.
Yeah, extraordinary
right,
what you
exactly.
see the babies doing in the womb. Hand gestures, facial gestures. I mean, obviously cognizant, obviously the external environment, but internally within the mother, and react to external stimuli as well. It's something that no longer can we claim ignorance or willful ignorance over.
And it's
I mean,
not
the science
about
is
belief,
there. This is
it's
not
about science.
Right, and that's what I was going to get at, is that this is not an issue that is ambiguous. The science is conclusive on this, correct?
Correct. And there are even studies that show that babies at that age feel pain to a greater degree than infants, newborn infants, or even adults. And that's because their pain perceptors are already created, but the pain inhibitors don't actually come into place until much later in the pregnancy, maybe 26, 27 weeks. So what it means is that the babies can feel pain, but their inhibitors are not working to stop the pain. So they feel pain to a greater degree.
Wow. I know this gets a little bit far afield of the science that we're talking about right now, but let's just get into human behavior. How does somebody, the focus especially at Planned Parenthood, they got to know. I mean, how do they do their consciences just become seared by the repetition of it? Do they believe a lie? I mean, what's going on internally to allow this horror to continue despite the knowledge of the pain that it's causing?
It's the same thing we're seeing in the videos, how nonchalantly people who are involved in the abortion industry can talk about human beings being torn apart, their organs used. It's the same thing that's happening. Of course, if they are not interested in the baby when the baby's alive and in pain as they're performing this abortion, and most abortions, by the way, at this age are done by dismembering the child. So actually, the child is torn apart limb from limb and bleeds to death. That is how a baby in the late trimesters is killed during an abortion. And if they can do that and rip apart their limbs and their body, and then look and observe them on a petri dish and then sell the parts. I mean, this is something that you have to grow callous to, because the human heart can't handle such tragedy.
In the third video, there was an interview with one of the workers that suggested that those that were tasked with actually taking the body parts and preserving them for sale, that when they first were confronted with the job, all of them would faint. I mean, they were so repulsed by what they were doing, and that eventually they got over it. In fact, one of the gals said that, look, that's what I was told, that eventually it wouldn't bother me anymore. And I just, when you read about what happened in the Holocaust, and, a lot of people said, oh, this could never happen again. It wouldn't happen in a civilized country. Well, I mean, it really is, isn't it?
It's exactly that. And the arguments that Planned Parenthood is using, which is, well, they're aborted fetal tissue, we might as well use them for research, is the same argument that was made in 1945. And actually, during the Nuremberg trials, a Nazi doctor, Julius Haller-Worden, said, if you're going to kill all these Jewish people, at least take the brains out so that their material can be utilized. It's the same argument. And it's completely unethical to abuse human beings for research in this way from aborted children.
Now, there's some motivation in Planned Parenthood to actually abort at a later stage because of higher value of body parts. We were talking about that during the break. Could you give our audience a little more insight into that?
Yes, and in fact, STEM Express, which is the biotech company that these video investigators were working with, actually has lists columns of organs based on price rates. So depending on what kind of organ it is, if it's a more popular organ, it's priced differently than a less popular organ. And then they also have drop-down lists of dates of how old the child is. So they'll have a 4-week-old preborn versus a 20-week or 24-week preborn, and those go up by the price. And so for example, on Stem Cell's website, you can buy a baby liver for anywhere between $2,500 to $25,000.
Unbelievable. Unreal. It just is shocking to me that there would be any problem at all getting any congressman or senator on board for a defunding bill. I mean, when presented with this kind of information, even the Democrats, pro-abortion Democrats, I mean, how can they say no to it?
Exactly, and this is the last straw, because Planned Parenthood has already been caught helping pimps to get abortions for minor girls who are trafficked. We've seen them cover up sexual abuse. We've seen them accept donations for racial abortions against black babies. We've seen them be open to doing all of the sex-selective abortions, killing baby girls. And on top of this, now it's the organ trafficking. And how can any organization that operates like this, and Cecile gets over $500,000 a year, and they receive over $500 million in taxpayer money. How can any organization receive money from us to continue doing the practices that they're doing?
Not to mention the fact that its origins is racist. Founder Margaret Sanger clearly, overtly, expressly backed racist policies designed, at least in part, Planned Parenthood to eliminate the impoverished class, an early backer of eugenics. I mean, these are the type of things that have given birth to this organization, which is basically the handmaiden of horror in this country. And I just hope all men and women of conscience in this country put significant pressure on their elected representatives and senators to get behind the defund effort. You know, with this current president, obviously, I don't think we're going to get him to sign on to this, but we ought to be able to get the 2/3 majority to override a veto anyway, shouldn't we?
We should, and I mean, this is a defining moment for us. Where do we stand as a nation, as we know that these babies are being destroyed and then their body parts are being sold? Where do we stand? We must take a stand.
Well, thank you, Arina Grossu, for doing what you're doing. As the director of the Center for Human Dignity at the Family Research Council, your organization is on the front lines, keeping out the fight on a number of different cultural battles, this one being perhaps the most important that we're facing now. Please keep up the good work. We'll put out that article on fetal pain that you put up on FRC at restoringliberty.com along with your podcast later today. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, Joe.
Stay with us. The Joe Miller Show, another great guest after these messages.